The meaning of life is just to be alive. It's so obvious, so simple, and yet everyone runs around in a panic, as if it were necessary to achieve something beyond oneself. Alan Watts. Now think and be honest with yourself. Are you really living or just existing? We wake up to the alarm clock, pick up the cell phone before we even get out of bed, check messages, scroll through social media. Time seems to slip through our fingers as we busy ourselves with everything but what really matters. And then the day begins. We work, we produce, we run, we consume. And at the end of the day, we're exhausted. But tomorrow it all starts again. Running where? Society has promised us that if we follow the rules, we'll find happiness. But look around you. We're more connected than ever, and at the same time, we've never been lonelier. We have more comfort, more technology, more entertainment. But why do we feel this emptiness? It's not an accident. It was designed. Alan Watts warned us that we live inside a great theater, an illusion so well constructed that we don't even realize we're trapped. We work non-stop, but we never have time. We connect all the time, but we never really feel seen. We've been sold an idea of happiness that, as soon as we try to reach it, dissolves like sand between our fingers. And the scariest thing? Most people never realize it. But you do. Maybe you can't put it into words. Maybe it's just that uncomfortable feeling, that heaviness in your chest at the end of the day, that thought that pops up in the middle of your routine. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Today, let's open that curtain. We're going to look beyond the illusions and question everything we've been told about success, productivity, and purpose. And most importantly, we're going to find out if there's still a way out. So if you've ever felt that something is wrong, but you've never been able to explain exactly what, stay until the end. Because maybe, today, you'll finally understand what has always been right in front of your eyes. Now tell me, what if, for a second, you stopped running? Imagine a man in an impeccable suit, sitting at a table in a luxurious restaurant. The expensive watch shines on his wrist, the sports car glistens in the parking lot, and the waiter serves a sophisticated dish. But he just fiddles with his food, with no appetite. Outside, the streets are full of hurried people, tired faces illuminated by the blue light of cell phones, bodies that move almost automatically, with no time to look around. He should be happy. After all, he has everything he ever wanted. But then a nagging thought crosses his mind. Was that it? The question lingers there, hammering away. He remembers the years of sacrifice, the sleepless nights, the endless meetings, and the cell phone vibrating non-stop. He followed all the rules. He worked hard. He built an empire. But now, looking at his reflection in the wine glass, he realizes something frightening. He no longer knows who he is. If all this was supposed to bring him happiness, why does he feel this emptiness? Now forget this man for a moment and think about yourself. Ever since we were children, we've been taught a roadmap. Study, work hard, build a career, buy a house, start a family, and one day, who knows, rest. But that day never comes. Because the truth is that we've been conditioned to never stop. The modern world doesn't want you to slow down. It needs you to keep running, producing, buying. From the moment we wake up, we are bombarded with stimuli, notifications, messages, social media. All the time we are reminded that we need to do more. What if, for a second, you dared to stop? If you decide not to follow this frenetic pace, the system reacts. You feel guilty, as if you were wasting time, as if slowing down were a failure. But have you ever stopped to think who benefits from your haste? Companies want your productivity. Social networks want your attention. The market wants your money. The whole system is designed to make you never feel enough. Alan Watts warned us. We have created systems to help us. Money, work, technology. But over time, these systems have come to control us. We became slaves to a vicious cycle. Wake up, work, consume, repeat. And that's why that man in the suit, sitting in the expensive restaurant, feels empty. He's done everything right, followed all the rules, but he realizes that he never chose any of it. He just followed the script that was written for him. Now imagine someone else. A middle-aged man, living in a small seaside town. He doesn't have a luxury watch or a sports car, but every morning he walks barefoot on the sand, feels the wind on his face, watches the sea. He works with something he enjoys, without haste. He doesn't live to accumulate, but to enjoy each day. He has much less than that successful businessman, but strangely, he seems much happier. Now for the most important question, who really won this game? The man who followed all the rules or the one who decided to ignore them? If that makes sense to you, it's no coincidence. Recent studies show that more than 70% of people feel dissatisfied at work. Most people don't hate what they do, but they feel that something is missing, as if they've been pushed down a path they never really chose. And perhaps they never had a choice. From the moment we are born, we are trained to enter this system. It tells us what we want, what we need, what we should strive for. But are we really choosing anything? Or have we been programmed never to question it? Now go back to that initial scene. The man in the restaurant finally gets up. He pays the bill, gets into his luxury car, and drives through the brightly lit streets of the city. But something has changed. The nagging thought hasn't gone away. For the first time, he realizes that the life he has led up to this point was not built by him, but for him. And maybe he's not the only one who feels that way. Maybe you do too. Now, the question is, what if this roadmap is wrong? What if we're chasing something that was never ours to begin with? Maybe the problem isn't just the cycle we're stuck in, but the empty promise we've been given about the future. And that's exactly what I want to talk about. Is this content making you reflect and sparking new ways of thinking? If so, click the super thanks button just below the video. It's a way to say thank you and help me bring more content like this to those who need to reflect on life. Have you ever felt that, no matter how much you achieve, the feeling of, I've got there, never comes? Like you're always climbing a mountain, but the top remains unreachable? Now imagine a runner on a treadmill. He's running, sweating, giving it his all. But no matter how fast he goes, he doesn't move. He thinks he's moving forward, but the landscape around him never changes. That runner, that's us. From an early age, we're told that progress is the key to happiness, that we need to have goals, objectives, and plans. And if we still don't feel complete, the solution is to keep moving forward. Work harder, earn more, achieve more. What if this is a trap? Consider what happened to Avicii, the Swedish DJ, who conquered the world with his music. At 26, he was already a millionaire, at the height of his success, playing to crowds and living the life that many dream of. But behind the scenes, he felt exhausted and lost. The intense pace of touring, the constant pressure to create something new, the feeling that no matter how much he did, it was never enough. He tried to stop. He tried to find peace, but the system wouldn't let him. And he wasn't the only one. Robin Williams, one of the greatest comedians of all time, made the world laugh. But inside he felt an immense emptiness. He had fame, fortune, and recognition. But even with all that, something was missing, and that emptiness was bigger than him. If success was the answer, why did those who made it to the top still feel this way? Alan Watts described it as a race without a finish line, an illusion where happiness is always in the next step, in the next car, the next house, the next job, but never here and now. Society sells us the idea that success is always a question of not yet. I haven't made enough money yet. I haven't achieved my ideal body yet. I haven't met the right person yet. I'm not happy yet. But what if that not yet never ends? We've been taught that life is a sequence of milestones, as if we were climbing steps towards a final destination. But what is that destination? When do we really stop and say, now I've made it? The truth is that this arrival never comes. And the cruelest thing? This system is designed so that it never comes. Think of the concept of programmed obsolescence. Companies manufacture products so that they break quickly, forcing you to buy the next model. But what if this logic wasn't just applied to products, but to us? The system doesn't want you to feel satisfied, because if you did, you'd stop running. If more money brought happiness, the richest countries would be the most satisfied. But the statistics say otherwise. After a certain point, more possessions don't mean more happiness. The same goes for fame, status, and material possessions. It all seems incredible from a distance, but when you get closer, you realize that satisfaction is fleeting. And it's not just money. It happens in all areas of life. Have you ever bought something you really wanted, only to realize a few days later that the excitement has worn off? Have you ever made an important achievement, and then felt you needed something more? This has a name: hedonic adaptation. Nobel Prize-winning psychologist Daniel Kahneman explains that human beings quickly get used to new achievements. A new car, a bigger house, a promotion at work, all bring a momentary surge of pleasure. But before long, we're back to our usual level of satisfaction, and we feel the need to seek more. Does this mean that we are doomed to eternal dissatisfaction? Schopenhauer said that life oscillates between boredom and pain. Boredom when we've achieved something, and pain when we're still pursuing it. An endless cycle, where the only thing we really have is the present moment, but we never make the most of it. That's why social networks are so addictive. They feed that feeling that something is always missing. There's always someone prettier, richer, more successful. There's always an unattainable standard telling us that we're not there yet. And while we're busy trying to reach that ideal, something precious is slipping through our fingers. Life is happening now, but we're so obsessed with the future that we forget to live it. And that's the biggest illusion of all, believing that happiness is up ahead, while it's always been right here, within our reach. Now stop and think, if everything we've been told about happiness is wrong, what else have we been led to believe? What would happen if, as well as making us chase after something unattainable, society had convinced us that we were alone on this journey? Because perhaps, more than infinite progress, the real trap is the idea that we have to face it alone. Think of a castaway lost in the ocean. No land in sight, no one to help, just him and the blue infinity around him. For a while, he believes he can manage on his own, but little by little, he realizes the cruel truth. No one survives long on their own. We've been told that the greatest proof of success is absolute independence. To be self-sufficient, not needing anyone. To build a life where everything depends only on you. But if this idea is so true, why do we never feel so alone? In recent years, the feeling of isolation has exploded. More than 60% of adults in the United States report feeling lonely frequently. The rate of depression among young people has skyrocketed. The number of people living alone has never been higher. And the scariest thing? All of this has happened in an age when we are more connected. How is it possible that we are surrounded by people and yet feel so distant? The answer is simple. We've been made to believe that individualism is freedom, but it's an invisible prison. Imagine a man who has spent his whole life building his independence. He's always done everything himself. He never asked for help. He never showed weakness. At work, he avoided getting attached to colleagues. In relationships, he kept his emotional distance. Now he has a solid career, a house of his own, and does everything without depending on anyone. But in the silence of the night, when the messages stop arriving and the notifications don't go off, he feels an inexplicable emptiness. Because nobody teaches us that extreme independence comes at a cost. Neuroscience shows that the human brain is programmed for social connection. Since cave times, survival has depended on the group, the warmth of the fire, mutual support, collaboration. And now, for the first time in history, we have become isolated. Psychiatrist Robert Waldinger, director of the largest study ever carried out on happiness, has revealed something shocking. The most important factor for a long and satisfying life is not money, fame, or success, but the quality of our human connections. This means that true wealth lies not in what we accumulate, but in who we have around us. But modern society has turned human connections into something superficial. We create profiles, followers, networks, but we no longer know how to build deep bonds. And loneliness isn't just a feeling, it's a silent poison. Studies show that isolation increases the risk of heart disease, weakens the immune system, and shortens life expectancy. Researchers claim that living without genuine connections can be as harmful as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And yet we continue to believe that not needing anyone is a sign of strength, as well as alienating us from each other. Modern society has taught us to see people as rivals. If someone conquers something, we feel we've lost. If someone goes up, someone has to come down. We've created a scarcity mentality where the other person's success seems like a threat. But think, when did we start seeing people as obstacles rather than allies? Alan Watts used to say that human beings are like waves in the ocean. Individual, yes, but inseparable from the whole. The wave doesn't exist without the sea. We don't exist without others. The problem is that we've been made to believe that we're islands, that we need to prove our worth alone, that depending on someone else is a sign of weakness. But what if the opposite is true? What if true power lies not in independence, but in interdependence? A famous study, known as Rat Park, revealed something surprising about human behavior. Researchers created two different situations. In the first, Rats were placed alone in cages, without contact with other rats, with free access to 2 bottles, one with water and one with morphine. They quickly became addicted to the drug. In the second situation, the rats were placed in an environment rich in stimuli, with other rats to play with and interact with. This time, almost no rats became addicted. What did this experiment show? That addiction and suffering don't just come from the substance itself, but from a lack of connection and purpose. What if this also applies to us? What if the loneliness we feel is actually a reflection of the world we've built? What if instead of seeking more independence, we needed to seek more belonging? Modern society has made us believe that we need to fight alone, that showing vulnerability is weakness, that depending on someone is a mistake. But what if all this is just another illusion? Did the happiest moments of your life, the ones that really marked your existence, happen alone? Or were they those shared moments, those looks of complicity, those moments when you felt part of something bigger? The world wants us to be islands, but islands are lonely, fragile and small. Maybe it's time to stop trying to be an island and remember that we've always been an ocean. Now think, what if the biggest mistake of our era is that we have believed that loneliness is a sign of strength? If you've already realized this, then there's an even deeper question. If we've been alienated from each other, taught to compete, and made to believe that we don't need anyone, what else have they taken from us without us realizing it? Have you ever tried holding sand with your hands? The more force you put into it, the faster the grains slip through your fingers. Control works in the same way. The more we try to control everything around us, the more frustrated and anxious we become. We live in a world obsessed with control. From childhood, we are taught that planning every detail of life is the key to success. We are told to choose the right profession, the right house, the right person. We're taught to avoid risks, predict the future, eliminate any uncertainty. But there's a problem with all this. Life is unpredictable. And the more we try to control the future, the more afraid we become of it. Psychologist Carl Jung said that what we resist persists. The more we try to predict and eliminate the chaos of life, the more chaos dominates us. The obsession with control does not bring us security, it imprisons us. Think of someone you know who plans everything down to the smallest detail. Maybe it's you. The impeccable schedule, the fear of unforeseen events, the anxiety about what can't be predicted. Now think, does this person really feel safe? Or are they always on alert, waiting for something to get out of hand? Modern society has taught us to see uncertainty as an enemy. But what if it was actually our greatest ally? Alan Watts used the metaphor of a river. He said that life is like a river that flows naturally. If you try to swim against the current, you waste energy, suffer, and wear yourself out. But if you learn to flow with it, you realize that the water itself carries you. We've been led to believe that the secret to happiness lies in eliminating risks. But the truth is that the secret lies in accepting the unpredictable. Think about your life. How many of the best things that have happened to you were planned, and how many were unexpected? A chance encounter, an opportunity that arose without warning, a change that seemed like a disaster, but then made everything fall into place? The collective anxiety we experience today is a direct reflection of this attempt to control the uncontrollable. Research shows that more than 40% of people suffer from anxiety related to the future. The fear of losing their job, of not meeting expectations, of failure. But what is this fear if not an attempt to ensure that everything goes exactly to plan? What if the plan goes wrong? We've been told that the right path is the one where everything is under control. But what happens when we realize that real life doesn't work like that? What happens when everything goes off script? The truth is that we move so far away from the unpredictable that we move away from our very essence. When was the last time you took a leisurely look at the sky? When was the last time you stepped barefoot on the earth, listened to the sound of the wind, felt the rain without complaining? Modern society has taught us that we are separate from nature. We build giant cities, surround everything with concrete, spend more time in front of screens than in the sunlight. But deep down, we are still the same beings who walked through the forests, who slept under the stars, who felt the rhythm of the seasons. And what happens when we sever this connection? We become more anxious, more depressed, more alienated. Studies show that contact with nature drastically reduces levels of cortisol, the stress hormone. Just 20 minutes a day in a natural environment is enough to calm the nervous system. But even knowing this, we spend most of our time stuck in offices, trains, cars, and apartments. The culture of extreme productivity has made us forget that we exist to live, not just to produce. The philosopher Henry David Thoreau realized this almost 200 years ago. He abandoned city life and went to live in a cabin in the middle of the forest. There he wrote, "I went to the woods because I wanted to live deliberately. I wanted to face only the essential facts of life and see if I couldn't learn what it had to teach me, so that when I died, I wouldn't discover that I had never lived." What if we're doing just that? Getting so distracted, so busy, trying to control so much, that in the end, we realize we never really lived. Modernity has promised us comfort, but has it brought us fulfillment? It promised us freedom, but did it bring us peace? It promised us control, but has it made us happier? If you've ever felt that something is out of place, maybe it's not your problem. Maybe it's a symptom of a world that has taken us away from who we've always been. Maybe the answer to what we're looking for doesn't lie in more planning, more effort, more control. Perhaps it lies in relearning how to simply exist. But how do we do that? How do we get out of this illusion and live with more meaning again? Now that we've dismantled the great illusions of modern society, the inevitable question arises: what do we do with this knowledge? Because realizing the illusion is only the first step. The real challenge is to escape it. But how? How do we break out of a system that is designed to keep us trapped? How do we get out of a gear that has taught us to run without ever getting anywhere? The answer may be simpler than it seems. Mahatma Gandhi said, "External freedom begins with internal freedom." In other words, before trying to change the world around you, you need to change the way you see and live within it. And that starts with a single movement. Stop running. For the first time, stop, breathe, observe. If society wants us to be always busy, always distracted, always searching for something, the greatest act of resistance is simply to be present. Philosopher Eckhart Tolle explains that the greatest source of human suffering comes from our inability to live in the now. We're always stuck in the past, or projecting the future, as if happiness lies in some other moment that never comes. But what if, instead of chasing a tomorrow that doesn't exist, we learn to live in the present? This may sound abstract, but think of a time when you really felt alive. Perhaps it was watching a sunset, laughing with friends, diving into the sea, listening to a song that touched your soul. At those times, you weren't thinking about the past or the future, you were simply there. And for an instant, the world made sense. So why don't we live like this all the time? Because we've been programmed to believe that life only has value when we're producing, improving, conquering. But what if true value lay in the simplicity of just being? This doesn't mean abandoning your responsibilities, quitting your job and living in isolation. It means changing your relationship with time, with consumption, with purpose. It means taking back control of your own attention. Think about it. Where is your attention going every day? To social networks that compare you with others? To a job that exhausts you but doesn't fulfill you? To worries that may never come true? What if, instead, your attention went to what really matters? What if we started prioritizing quality time with the people we love, seeking real experiences instead of digital distractions? Reconnecting with nature, finding pleasure in what we already have instead of always waiting for life's next upgrade. The happiest people in the world are not those with the most money, the most status, or the most followers. They are the ones who have managed to slow down, be present, and live with intention. Remember the study we talked about earlier? The one that showed that human connections are the most important factor for a fulfilling life? Well, now think about what that really means. It's no use just knowing this intellectually. How many times have we heard simple truths, and yet we continue to live the same way? Knowing that something is important doesn't change anything if we don't apply that knowledge. What if, instead of just agreeing with this idea, we started living it? If we cultivated more moments of presence, more quality time, more real conversations? If we stopped measuring success by our bank account and started measuring it by the moments that really matter? It doesn't sound like much, but the truth is that big changes start with small daily revolutions. The system wants you to believe that you have no choice, but you do. You always have. And if you've made it this far, you may have already realized that. But there's one last piece to the puzzle, because understanding all this is liberating, but at the same time, it can be frightening. If we realize that the world we live in is a construction full of illusions, what comes next? If everything we were told about happiness, progress, and control was a sham, what does it really mean to live? If you've followed everything up to this point, You've already realized that the world we live in isn't exactly what we've been told. Society has taught us to chase success that never comes, to believe that infinite progress is the path to happiness, to isolate ourselves in the name of independence, to fear the unknown, and to try to control every detail of life. But what if the real mistake isn't just in the system, but in the way we learn to see life? Alan Watts said that humanity's great illusion is to believe that we are separate from the whole. We separate work from life, success from happiness, self from other, mind from body, man from nature. But deep down, everything has always been connected. And if we're unhappy, anxious, and dissatisfied, it's not because we need to run even more. It's because we need to stop. Stop putting off happiness for a future that never comes. Stop fighting life as if it were a problem to be solved. Stop measuring our worth based on external standards. Because the truth is that you already have everything you need to live fully. You don't need another promotion. You don't need anyone's approval. You don't need to reach some unattainable level of perfection. You just need to be here, right now. All the time we ask ourselves, what do I need to do to be happy? But maybe that's the wrong question. What if instead we asked, what do I need to stop doing? Stop comparing yourself. Stop looking for validation. Stop running without knowing where. What would happen if, for the first time, you decided to simply live? This doesn't mean giving up on your ambitions or ignoring your responsibilities. It means changing your point of view. It means understanding that life is not a race to a final destination, but a flow that happens now, in this moment. And the big question is, are you living this moment, or just waiting for the next one? Perhaps this is the most important choice you can make. And remember, knowledge is the path to true freedom. Count on me and follow the white rabbit.